Do you like pecan pie? You are going to love this pecan pie cobbler. If you need to make it for a crowd, this serves more people than just a pie. And honestly, I like it better. The ratio of the ingredients, a little bit of crust and a little bit of the filling, it's a little bit different than the pie, and I actually like it better. I really do. So you're going to want to stick around, jump in, and make this with me today. Pecan Pie Cobbler. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine, and welcome to my table. I'm so glad you're here today because with this twist on pecan pie, I really love the way it turns out. It's so similar to pecan pie, but the ratio of the ingredients in this dish, to me, just make it better. Now, I've already got my crust pulled together. I use my mixer for this, and I'm going to link another recipe where I show you how to do this and get it to this point. And so I've got it ready, and we're going to go ahead and roll out the bottom layer of our crust for this cobbler. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. What we have here is a double pie crust. It's just the same recipe I use when I make a pie and need to have two pie crusts, a top and a bottom. And what I'm going to do now is kind of divide it in half, but I'm going to make one half a little bit bigger than the other half, and that's going to be our bottom crust. We need a little extra so that it can come up the edges of our pan, and the top crust won't need that. So when you see, I'm just going to kind of split it up like this. You see how one is a little bit bigger than the other. So we're going to use the bottom one first, or the bigger one first for our bottom crust. I'm just going to sprinkle a little flour on my clean counter. Make sure we got plenty. Put a little bit on top, and I always put it on my rolling pin as well. I'm going to kind of flatten it with my hands first. Just makes that rolling process easier to begin. All right. And what we want to end up with is kind of a rectangle shape. I'm going to use a 9x13 pan for this cobbler. So we're going to try to get this the right size to just fit in the bottom of the 9x13 pan and come up a little bit on the edges. This does not have to be perfect. That's one of the things I really like about making the cobbler instead of a pecan pie. Is it's so forgiving on the edges. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to crimp that little edge of your pie crust. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Kind of push this together a little bit better as I'm rolling. But this, like I said, it does not have to be perfect. We just want to get a good big rectangle. It's starting to stick to my rolling pin a little bit. Let's get a little more flour. You spread it out just a little bit more. And I think we'll almost be there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to spray my dish well. That way, if any of that filling leaks out, that's just going to help making the pan clean up a little easier. It's not going to stick quite as bad to it. All right, and then let's just unfold it into our pan. And that's about what we want. And you can kind of use your fingers to kind of help piece a little bit of it back together or come up a little bit on the edges. And like I said, this does not have to be perfect. This is a cobbler, not a pie, with your pretty edges. So, okay. I think that's going to be good enough right there. So now we're going to go ahead and make our filling because we're going to use part of it right now. Our ingredients are simple for this pie. We're just going to use butter, pecans, some vanilla. You do use some of the light corn syrup. You can use the dark corn syrup if you want. Just know that your pie will look a little bit darker. And the recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar, but I like to split it up and use a little bit of brown sugar in mine. I think it just helps that richness of flavor come through a little bit better. And then we need some eggs. The first thing I'm going to do is melt our butter. So I'm going to stick that in my microwave and let it melt, and we'll start putting some other things together then. I'm going to start with the eggs first, and we can beat them pretty well before we add our other ingredients. We need 6 eggs for this recipe. That's more than what you would use in a pecan pie, but this is going to be bigger than a pie would be. So that makes perfect sense. All right, let's go ahead and whisk our eggs. All right, now we have our butter melted as well. First, I'm going to add our sugar. I'm just going to let that butter cool a little bit. There's not a particular order. You can just dump all this in the bowl at the same time. Since that butter is so hot right now, I'm just going to add a couple other things first. That's the only reason I'm doing it this way. I'm going to start out with about a half a cup of the white sugar. And then I'm going to add about a half a cup of brown sugar as well. I'm almost out of brown sugar. Let's see. Let's make sure I've got half a cup when it's packed. Yeah, that should be about right. Okay. There we go. We got our sugar added. We'll also go ahead and add our vanilla. And you want to be generous with your vanilla in this recipe. For this size, you want to use 2 to 3 teaspoons. So I'm going to do a couple of pretty generous splashes there, which probably equals that. I'll go ahead and give this a quick stir just to give that butter another second or two to cool a bit. Now we can go ahead and add our butter. Okay, now we're going to add our corn syrup, and we need 2.5 cups of this. I'm just going to use this same measuring pitcher. Now let's mix it up really well with that final ingredient before we add our pecans, because I like to do everything else with the whisk, but once you add the pecans, I'm going to switch utensils here. Okay, now to add the pecans, I'm going to switch to my whisk, or switch from my whisk to my just little spatula here, and we're going to add 2 cups. I like my pecans chopped a little bit. You can use just half pecans if you want the whole half in there without chopping it. You can certainly do that, but this is just my preference. And now we're just going to mix that up pretty well. And then come with me over here where we have our crust ready, and I'll show you how we start layering this cobbler. Okay, here we have our crust that we prepared. I'm going to make sure this is mixed pretty well. We're going to add about half of this filling at this point. I don't measure it. I just kind of eyeball it. I think that's probably about half, maybe just a touch more. All right. And see, that pretty much covers the whole bottom. And then I'm going to put this over to the side and save it until we go ahead and get our top crust rolled out. Let's get some more flour sprinkled. And this one, we don't need to roll out quite as large. Of course, we started with a little bit smaller ball of crust here, so it should work out just about right. But there again, if you mess up and you don't get your measurements quite like you want, it's not going to matter. It's going to all bake together. It's going to all taste delicious. And it's going to be just fine. All right, that looks about right. So I'm just going to pick it up and we're just going to kind of layer it right over what we just added. And you see there are some parts where it doesn't go up at all, which is fine. Some parts where it kind of goes up the edge of the pan as well. And that is not going to matter. It's perfectly great just the way it is. Now, we just take the rest of our filling and we layer it on the top. I'm just going to use this a little bit and just make sure it's spread out. It kind of does it automatically, but I'm just going to help it a little bit. And that is all there is to putting it together. Now we're going to put it in the oven. We're going to bake it at 350 degrees for about 40 to 50 minutes. Boy, it smells good in this kitchen right now. I've actually let it go for 45 minutes, and I think it looks perfect. So let's take it out of the oven. Now, here's the hardest part about making this dish is letting it sit long enough to dig into it. It's just a little too hot right now. We need to let it cool a little bit. But in my opinion, the perfect time to eat this is when it has cooled just enough that you can get into it, but it's still warm. Okay, it's still warm, but it's cooled down enough. Let's get a piece. One thing I did right after I took it out of the oven, and I forgot to show you guys this, I sprinkled a little bit of sea salt on top because this is such a sweet dessert. That filling for pecan pie is just so sweet that I like to cut it with a little bit of salt. So anyway, I forgot to show you all that, but that's an add-on if you want to do yours that way. Let's put a little bit of ice cream on top. All right, let's get a bite. This is the true test. Get a little bit of that crust, the filling, and a little bit of ice cream with it. Still warm. Perfect time to eat it. That is so good. Honestly, this is one of those recipes I like this more every single time I make it. It is so delicious. I really think you're going to like it too. I'm so glad you were with me today here at Mary Catherine's Table. I really think you're going to like this recipe. If you like this content, hit the subscribe button, share us with your friends, and you'll get notifications about when we come out with new videos. We'd love to have you join us along for the ride. And remember to go out today and find someone who needs a little bit of kindness and give them some of yours.